On a cold, dark October night at the Kerbal Space Center, a tall rocket leaves for deep space within the Kerbal system. This is en route to a craft that is currently stranded on its way to Dres. What happened was upon the launch of the craft got into orbit with the crew on board and set out for Dres. However, it was soon discovered that the thrust, coupled with the amount of fuel that was already on board, was not enough to ensure a safe return, and so the mission has been put into jeopardy. The only way left for these Kerbals to return home is for fuel to be sent forth from Kerbin. Previous attempts have already failed, and now this is the last one that can actually be launched before the launch window is too small, and so therefore they won't be able to actually launch any more of these things. But guys, welcome to another pseudo KSP missions thing today, where today we are going to have a little mission to Dres. I say mission to Dres, we already actually have our crude stage, which you saw in the intro clip, pretty much halfway there to Dres. It's coming up in interplanetary space just a little bit behind Kerbin, and it's actual pure chance that Kerbin is in the perfect position for a trans-Dres transfer maneuver. Because if you see the craft there that I'm targeting, which is obviously the mothership, which is currently out of fuel, it has an encounter with Dres. It's a very weak encounter, granted, but we're going to try and rendezvous with this mothership craft, refuel its lander, attempt to get into Dres orbit, continue the mission as normal, and then of course come home. It's not going to be easy. This is definitely one of the more complex missions, and like I say, the whole reason this thing exists is purely by chance. I was playing through Kerbal Space Program for fun the one day a couple of days ago, and I sort of got stuck like this, so I thought might as well film the rescue mission for you guys to actually see, so you could see my feeble attempts, because I've never really actually tried a rescue mission in Kerbal Space Program. Usually if I have to rescue a Kerbal, I just leave them there, or like do the KIA thing and do the honourable thing and put them down, to put it in a more clinical way, shall I say. But you can see here we're now about to leave Kerbin SOI to get into our initial orbit, which will take us out to the rough sort of area as regards to where Dres actually is and the craft that we're supposed to be rendezvousing with. You can see we have a second maneuver plan to sort of alter the direction of the orbit further, so we can actually bring ourselves closer to the craft that we are supposed to be rendezvousing with. This was by no means an easy mission. Dres, believe it or not, is actually a very, very hard planet to go to for little reward, I think. Obviously, the KSP devs have tried to make Dres a little bit more interesting in the last few updates, adding the asteroid belt around it, which can only be discovered, by the way, once you've visited Dres, as far as I'm aware. Not quite sure why that's been done. I'm guessing it's because, well, they want to leave some sort of secret, sort of latter game discovery, I suppose, for when you actually visit bodies and stuff, as opposed to just sending probes and stuff there. But I think it's a pretty cool addition, definitely, yeah, for Dres, especially because it makes it an actual worthwhile destination now. But in terms of just exploration, like what I'm doing here, it's kind of a boring place to go. I think it's just a little bit smaller than the moon. I'm not quite sure on that. It may be a little smaller, it's a little bit larger. It's around about the same sort of size, I believe, as the moon, hence why it's classed as a dwarf planet and not a proper planet. It's a very, very boring world, to be honest. There's no real atmosphere, no real gravity. It's just brown and boring, and that's why it's been dubbed the potato in space, I'm guessing. And it's just really, really hard to actually get captured there because of the low gravity and the fact that you're actually entering its sphere of influence under really, really high speeds. You're entering it from interplanetary speeds, which is kind of dumb, I think. Obviously, if you play your cards right, you don't have any issues whatsoever. But if you sort of play it half-assed like I do, it can sort of cause a few problems, and you'll probably see them a little bit later on with this mission. So you can see here we're trying to trim our encounter, get it as close as possible to the mothership that we're trying to rendezvous with here. This was the point that I realised that I was using liquid fuel at a rate that was not pretty whatsoever. It was clearly a mistake to keep this transfer stage the way it was, although we did end up actually doing it alright, I believe. I had to literally feather the throttle on like the first tick, and even that was almost too powerful with this big Kerbal engine that I was using. A lot of people will probably be asking why I didn't like use the fuel, a little bit of the fuel from the actual resupply probe itself, because I did pack excess fuel on that thing and excess monopropellant. The reason for that was I only packed liquid fuel and no oxidizer. That's because I'd only burnt through the liquid fuel in my in the actual mothership. All the oxidizer for the lander was still intact, but because I was using nuclear engines, as we all know, only use nuclear fuel. They're like jet engines in that respect, because they obviously annihilate the fuel in a reaction chamber, and all good stuff happens and thrust comes out the back. Admittedly a tiny amount of thrust, but thrust comes out the back. And so I only decided to pack liquid fuel on this probe for lightness' sake, and just because, well, oxidizer wasn't really needed because we had full tanks of oxidizer on the actual mothership. But you can see here we have actually successfully managed to rendezvous by some mad reason. Deep space rendezvous is a lot harder, as you'd probably expect, than low Kerbal orbit rendezvous. You can see here we're slowly coming in, and we're getting to the time where we need to ditch this upper stage here now. Slowing down almost to a stop, so we're going to flip over any second now. We're going to ditch this upper stage here. There we go. And we're going to continue moving in using the RCS that's built into this thing. Now, we're going to do this refuel in 2 stages. We're firstly going to refuel the main mothership because that's where all the crew are. We're going to undock the lander for this, which you will see in a second once we've actually braked and started station keeping next to this, next to the mothership here. What we'll do is, because we only have the one docking port on the actual mothership here, we will undock the lander, we will dock this resupply probe to it, we'll transfer all of our liquid fuel from our Rockomax jumbo orange tank that we have, we will transfer all of that across to the mothership. You can see us undocking the lander now, moving it out of the way so that we can get the resupply probe in front. What we will then do is we will, pardon me, we will then undock the resupply probe and flip it around through 180 degrees. We will then dock it to the lander, where we will fill up the lander's tanks, which of course are full of oxidizer, and once that's done, any excess fuel, any excess monopropellant will be transferred to the mothership and the lander. We will then undock the probe, move it clear, and redock the lander, and then we'll be on our merry way once again, on our way to Dres. So you can see here we're coming in towards the actual Dres mothership. This was a very slow process, and you're watching all of this mission at 4 times normal speed, because I'm guessing you guys don't really want to listen to me talk and this whole mission and the whole hour and 10 of it for too long. That's why I've tried to keep this thing as short as I possibly can. You can see here I'm using the docking alignment. I'm sort of half using the docking alignment indicator from Navy Fish. It is very, very useful when gauging your actual alignment to the docking port that you're trying to target. It's definitely made my life a lot easier, because before it made dockings very wobbly, and because you approach the port at an angle rather than checking your orientation relative to it. But at least now I can get my orientation somewhat correct anyway. And I noticed there the lander was sort of drifting away, so I had to move it so that it was slowly drifting back up to get us in position, ready to redock. But you can see we have docked the resupply probe with the mothership here, and you can see there is no time to waste. We've got to start filling up our liquid fuel tanks here. Obviously these tanks are empty of oxidizer because, well, we didn't need the oxidizer in the mothership, like I say, because we had nuclear engines. So now it's time to undock. We've fueled up, we're nice and full and ready to go. It's now time to maneuver the lander into position. I decided to be a little bit quite, I don't know even know the words to say it, liberal with my use of RCS of the lander here, because obviously the lander didn't really have much RCS left, because we used some of it to try and trim our Dres encounter when we were actually out of fuel in the mothership beforehand. So I realised that we only had a few units of RCS left, so I tried to be as conservative as possible, and then I just decide, well, why don't I just use the fuel tanker instead? It's got tons of RCS on board, and so that's what I end up doing. So we bring ourselves in. Obviously I didn't get the orientation quite correct here, not quite there, but we do eventually dock, no problem. And then it's basically a case of filling up all the tanks, both of oxidizer and of liquid fuel, because then we'll be full and ready to go. I should just point out while we're watching this process go through the motions, because it's not very interesting, this is the first of 3 videos that I'm going to be releasing this week. This is obviously going out either on the Monday or the Tuesday, depending on how my internet decides to behave, because it's been behaving really, really badly at the moment. And also, another two videos will be coming out. First of all, Operation Exploration Episode 3 will be out this week. It is almost complete. Finally, I know I have been... I've sort of been putting it off because the episodes really do take a long time to make, and I've sort of been hit in the face with college and stuff like that. I do have college work that I need to be getting on with right at the moment, but it's my birthday today, so I'm not actually going to be getting on with that until I absolutely have to. So you can see we undock the resupply probe and we start to bring it away from the actual border, the actual... I don't even know what to call it, the mothership / lander. But then we realise, wait, we forgot to offload our RCS, because of course I won't be able to redock. So we redock with the lander and we transfer the RCS over. And of course we had a little bit more liquid fuel to actually bring over as well, because I'm an idiot and I don't check the resources tab before I undock. But you can see here we now thrust this thing away, and away it goes. At a fair old rate, actually, bearing in mind it was only being powered by 4 monopropellant engines. But then it's time, just of course, to redock the lander. But anyway, back to the point that I was saying. Operation Exploration Episode 3 will be out at some point this week. I'm hoping maybe Thursday or Friday. I can't be sure. I will definitely have it out at some point this week, though. And the third video that you'll be getting is, of course, KSP News Episode 51. Not quite sure what's going to be in it this week. Obviously, we skipped this week's KSP News because, well, it was my birthday. I wanted to take the weekend off to celebrate. And, but yeah, I'm really hoping that there's going to be some good stuff in the dev notes this coming Tuesday, which I believe is the 20th, if I am not mistaken. I'm hoping there's going to be some good stuff with regards to QA and experimental testing for 1.0.5, because I'm really looking forward to that update now. With all the parts and stuff. Obviously, it kind of sucks that Unity 5 isn't coming in this update, but we want to make sure that it works, and I did actually go through this in the KSP News episode. But you can see now we've redocked, and we're now trimming our encounter to get as close to Dres as we possibly can, and slow ourselves down as much as we can. Obviously, we could impact Dres like we nearly did there, and there, but unfortunately we don't really want to do that because of the whole dying thing, so... I started to get a little bit suspicious here as soon as I saw this, because our orbital flyby of Dres is very, very straight. And that's never a good thing. If your orbital flyby is very straight, it means you're travelling very, very fast. So you can see here we're making the course correction to commit ourselves to doing this, and I believe you'll be able to see the quick save pop up in a second, showing that we are in fact committed to that course. And of course I don't bother to put the docking alignment thing away until a while because I am an idiot. But you can see that our orbital plane relative to Dres is very, very straight. That's because Dres has such little gravity, it can't really capture us or slow us down into orbit enough. You can see it takes almost, well, over 2 kilometers a second to actually slow down. All of that on 2 nuclear engines. Oh boy, this is going to be fun. And so you can see here we're basically preparing for the maneuver. I just thought it might be best. Obviously, I time warped past there, so I quick loaded. And I just kind of thought we might as well just go for it, and if it fails, we'll just count it as a flyby mission and go home. We'll just ditch the lander, take every inch of fuel that we had from it, and just go home and fly home for Kerbal, and we'll class it as a flyby mission rather than an actual lander mission. We will have to return there at a later date. And that is indeed the case. I started burning too late. It ended up being a 15-minute burn, so I don't think I would have had the fuel for it anyway. So I think it was the best thing to do, just have a flyby of Dres, but you can see just how fast we were travelling here. We're on normal time warp, but you can actually see Dres slowly looming closer to us, even though we're only on 1 times time acceleration, which is kind of scary actually, that we're actually going this close to such a rocky body. And travelling at this sort of speed. You can see the view from inside the cockpit here. Obviously the mission directives have changed. We need to get as many images of Dres as possible during our flyby to do as much science as we possibly can in order to in order to make sure that the mission was worthwhile. So you can see here we're burning retrograde furiously here, but it just isn't enough. We fly past the periapse of Dres, and once we get a little bit out of, a little bit higher in Dres altitude, I just think it's not worth it. I cut the throttle, kill the node, and it's basically a case now of transferring the guy who was in the lander back into the main command module, getting all of the liquid fuel that we could possibly need into the tanks to make sure we have a full tank in order to get home, and basically then just ditching the lander. We did have a little bit of excess fuel which we actually physically couldn't carry with us, so we just used that with the lander. We undocked the lander here, obviously it's probe controlled, and we decided to fire retrograde to see if the Poodle engine may get it captured into orbit, so at least we'd have some sort of satellite, but alas, again, it just isn't enough. Dres's gravity is so low, and we were coming in at such high speed that it really didn't matter. The fact that we were slowing down, we would have never slowed down quick enough to actually get into orbit. The thing was doomed from the beginning. The whole mission was doomed from the beginning. But at least we have enough fuel to actually return home now, as we leave Dres behind and it becomes a speck in the distance, the cosmic distance of existence the Kerbals live in. It's time to start planning the route home. This is where I ran into some issues once again with my forward planning skills. As you can see, Dres and Kerbin aren't exactly brilliantly aligned, and to even get them close to being properly aligned, it's going to take a lot of Delta V and a lot of burning, and I'm not sure I even have enough fuel for that, even though I have absolutely tons of fuel aboard my ship at the moment. And yeah, this is the dilemma that I have at the moment. I may have to wait and give these guys another orbit around the sun, or Kerbal, before they actually get to see Kerbin again, which absolutely sucks in my opinion, but if it has to be, it has to be. These guys can photosynthesize off the light from Kerbal anyway, so it's not like they're going hungry or anything. They can survive. Kerbals are fine. We'll just keep them in a box or something. They'll be in cryos. Let's pretend they either photosynthesize or they're in cryosleep. One of the two. I'm sure they'll survive, but it still sucks that I've got to wait some time. And I guess I will show you the actual return in the next episode, because I didn't want to make this video too long, because, well, otherwise you guys would have gotten bored. I know that 30-minute videos with KSP, especially with my voice droning on for so long and almost stutteriness, then it's probably not the best thing to listen to. So I'm going to leave it here, guys. I will show you the next episode at some point. It will be coming, don't worry. I won't leave it be this time. I will finish this thing. We will have closure. So until the next time, guys, remember to like and subscribe for more, and peace out.